I'm conscious that I am all, apart from Greg Smith, that stands between you and lunch. So I'll try not to gallop, but I will go at a bit of a canter. Just to help, show of hands for those of you who managed to get through the government's online questionnaire. A few of you who know what I'm talking about, but okay, so we'll talk about that. Okay. We are banging on about more than 90% say no. That is likely to become a cornerstone of future messaging and all that. So I think it's just worth explaining how we got to that more than 90% and why we think it's a valid figure. You will be aware of the government's first stage of consultation, which involved this thing which, if you are a consultant selling market research to the government, you don't call it an online survey, you call it a digital engagement platform. It's exactly the same thing. And some of you have just said you've been through that. In the end, that survey, any of you who've seen it, will come away with a clear feeling that it was all about getting the answers they wanted to the questions they wanted to ask people. It was, we would say, presumptive in that it says the ARC is a done deal, it is going to happen, how are you going to live with it? Which is not necessarily the truth. But that was their standpoint. The questions were leading questions. There were things like, how much do you want a green environment? How much do you want affordable housing? How much do you want jobs? Well, everybody wants some of those, of course they do. So you're going to answer yes to all those questions to some degree or other. The questions were selective in that they left out the difficult questions. They didn't ask the hard questions. It was just the easy ones about environment, jobs, growth and all that. The questionnaire itself was lengthy and, as the lady there said, with regard to Bedford, impenetrable. If you are a dedicated supporter of the ARC, or if you're an intern working for a developer company, then you'll be motivated to go all the way through it and give them all the answers they want. If, like many of us, you're just depressed and irritated about the ARC, then it was very hard work to get to the end of the survey. It also inhibited opinions, in the sense that if you wanted to do a kind of free-form comment, if you wanted to answer the questions but also offer your own opinion, you had to answer all their questions before you were allowed to put in your own opinion. And remember, you were answering questions which they wanted to ask and you were giving the answers they wanted to hear. That was almost unavoidable. So we felt that was a poor starting point for consultation, and there was a need to do something different. Oh, I'm sorry, I should say, to summarise their approach to consultation, they could have done it in a one-page questionnaire saying, do you think the ARC is a good idea? Do you think it's an excellent idea? Do you think it's a bloody brilliant idea? So, yeah, so we figured that's a pretty poor starting point for consultation. And most notably, it didn't ask the hard questions. Do you want the development? If you do, where do you want it? How much of it do you want? What price are you prepared to pay for it in environmental terms? All that kind of stuff. So then they ran that survey from 20th of July to early October, long enough to get a good enough response. That's fair enough. They gave people enough time to do it. They promoted it through the website and social media, which probably has a tendency toward younger audiences who are most likely to be in favour of growth and jobs and affordable housing and all that kind of thing. I don't think that was their principal concern, but it suited them to do it that way. We decided we ought to have a look at how it should be done to come up with something which might balance against what one would reasonably say is a very biased kind of consultation. Let's do something, and let's try and do it not with a bias in the opposite direction, but let's try and be the honest broker here. And let's take a step back from that gaslighting thing, that done deal scenario. The ARC is not actually been statutorily decided, not yet. So we ran our survey and we were late off the mark. It took us a week or two to plough through that government consultation and find its flaws and to figure out how to do something alternative. but we ran from early August until early November, deliberately over the same time period, time scale that the government did. So we could truthfully say we had a like-for-like comparison in terms of its reach and its duration and all that. We asked us 9 questions, plus 2 questions, sort of qualifying questions about age and location, which would help us understand the answers. And those questions were focused on some very simple topics, like levelling up. What do they think about it? Is this a levelling up issue? Where should the growth be? What do you think about the environment? And particularly important, what do you think about the democratic aspects of all this? So here are the questions, all very simple. You'll see them, they're on the walls if you want to look at them later, but I'll scoot through them. And I should say that in a working career of reading through the tea leaves of obscure market research, consumer surveys, focus groups, things like that, I have very rarely, if at all, seen such clear-cut responses and opinions as we see in this 5-minute survey. There are usually shades of grey in all of these things. There's a diversity of opinion, and we had a lot of opinions, something like 4,000. I have rarely seen anything so clear-cut. But we start off here, what do you think about levelling up? Is this a levelling up issue? Well, let me do the adding up. 54% said it's either better to do it somewhere else altogether, or certainly you should be looking at other regions before you decide this is where to do the levelling up. There's a doubt in people's minds that other areas have been looked at sufficiently closely. 2% of them say the ARC will benefit everyone and help to level up the country. Well, 54% against 2%, I don't think that's a close race at all. How do you feel about the increase in growth rates that the ARC would impose on you in the 5 counties? Pretty much doubling it wherever you are. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, 94% disapprove or strongly disapprove. 1% approve of the doubling of growth rates. Again, no contest. But accepting there should be some growth, and everybody's got some growth in their plans, what rate should that growth be at? Well, again, 93%, 93% say it should either be at the national average rate, or bearing in mind that we've had a lot of growth over history anyway, or it should be at a lower rate than elsewhere in the country. Growth would be better somewhere outside the ARC. 3% less than didn't know. Can we combine the proposed high rate of development, any high rate of development, with these improvements to nature, as the ARC promoters are claiming will come automatically as a byproduct, as a bonus of all this? Can we do that? Well, 92% say it's probably or definitely impossible. They just don't believe it, they don't buy it. 2% say probably possible. Should the government be working to improve nature and the environment without any strings attached to development? Without saying the developer should have to pay for it? Well, 75%, 93% agree or strongly agree, yes, there should be no ties to development for looking after our environment and our nature and ecology. Or 1% disagree with that. 1% think, yeah, we should have development to fund it. The government consultation, indeed, the ARC proposal, presumes a lot of things. It presumes, democratically, on our behalf, that we want jobs, we want growth, we want this, that, the other, and we want it all here. Those decisions have been made for us. So we said it would be valuable to say to people, well, what actually are your priorities? Without being prompted by the Ministry of Levelling Up, what things matter to you? And here we do get a diversity of things. How interesting. But understandably, predictably, people say clean air, we want clean air, we want green spaces, we want climate change action, And bear in mind the survey happened before COP26. And the least things that people felt were their priorities, or for their children, were economic growth and jobs for everyone. That's not because they don't approve of those things, they don't think we should have them. They feel, because they live in the 5 counties, as most of our respondents do, that we've already got that. That should happen somewhere else. And do you believe that those priorities you've just described are somehow compatible with the government's ambitions for the ARC? Well, 88% say that are partly or completely incompatible. It can't be done. The ARC does not deliver what they want. They want something different to what the ARC delivers. 5% said very or mostly compatible. So the ARC is a vast and irreversible decision. How should a decision like that be made? What kind of democratic process do you think we should have? Well, 0% felt that developers and businesses and landowners and universities should be making the decisions about things like the ARC. Only 2% felt central government, or growth boards, or local enterprise partnerships. Again, the overwhelming majority here, 85%, said it should be done locally. 41% locally by elected representatives. 44%, even more, as locally as possible, by referendum. There's a thought. But certainly, the opinion there is not the way it's being done at the moment. And here's a killer. This is the good one. If there was that referendum, which you would like to have held today, would you vote for the Oxcam ARC? 93% say no. Simple as that. Yes said 4%, and nearly as many, 3%, didn't know. Too difficult to decide. But that's 93%. How often do you see 93% in a bit of market research or a local election? You don't. But you see it here, and it's real. The other 2 questions we asked, and we should just look quickly at those, where do you live? Well, 86% of the respondents lived inside the ARC. And that's fine, that's fair enough. Their opinions matter. The opinion of somebody living in Oxford probably counts for more than the opinion of somebody living in Dumfries. That's quite fair. So we don't mind that. The age profile of the audience was the age profile we see here, pretty much. Middle-aged to senior and all that kind of thing. That's partly a reflection of the natural demographic of the 5 counties. Maybe it's a reflection of the people who have the concerns at this moment in time. Now, interestingly, the 93%, I think it's true to say, we hit at the end of the government's consultation period. We carried on for a bit longer, and the longer we carried on, the younger the age profile in respondents went. Because we're trying to unearth concern from younger people who have other things on their mind. And what happened there was a slight uptick in the issues which you would expect to matter to younger people. Jobs, affordable homes, healthcare, that kind of thing. The things they've been told to worry about. But although there was a slight reduction from the 93%, it only got closer to 91%. Still, far and away, over 90%, decided that they thought the ARC was a rotten idea. We managed to capture 4,183 responses to our survey online. Government got 3,000 because that's what was published on their website. And anecdotally, they're saying, oh, they had several thousand more, around 3,000 more. Now, they might imply that those were positive and helpful. It is reasonable to assume that some of the nearly 6,000 responses that the government got were from the same people who filled in the 5-minute survey, or for people who didn't fill in the 5-minute survey, but still didn't like the ARC. So there's no reason to assume that those nearly 6,000 are all in favour of the ARC. Looking at our own sampling of opinions in the group, 90% were against it. So we may never get to see what their actual responses were, but we can guess how they might go. So I leave you with that. That's the number we know, we trust. And that's a number I expect you'll be hearing a lot more about in the future.
Thank you very much for that. My name is Anya Schäfer, I live in Buckingham, and it's just for understanding a bit better or the nature of your data. How representative do you feel this is of the people who actually live here? Because it seems to me that it's a self-selecting survey, and while I would have answered exactly the same the questions in pretty much the same way, and I think many people have, I think somebody could say, well, it will be the people who aren't, the people who responded to your survey were the ones who were against it. And would they be right to be asking that?
They would be right to say it is, to a considerable extent, self-selecting. Yeah, but the same thing can be said of a government survey. So in that sense, we feel confident we have like-for-like comparison. The only other way to do it is to send a letter to every household in the 5 counties. If the government had done that, that would have been very brilliant of them. It would have given us a problem because we would have had to do the same thing. But yeah, self-selecting, yes, but no more so than the government survey.
Any more? No, so get the proper one.
Thank you, Roger. What you've just told us and what Mike said before points to the lack of democracy in our country. And there's been some discussion about whether elected mayors are a good idea or not. I do find our democracy very difficult because I'm elected to South Oxfordshire District Council. The Lib Dems and the Green Party both have as their underlying constitution that they support committees in local government, and yet as soon as these people get into power, something happens to them, and some sort of narcissism takes place whereby they're in there, they're in with the officers, they're self-important, they're paid, will be an issue in some cases, and they lose interest in the people who've elected them. Only in the sense, do they retain interest in them, in the sense that they want to be re-elected next time. So I don't know what the answer to that is. We're not going to go for a committee system, despite being Lib Dem Green run. And secret things happen in cabinet and in specific growth-based committees that other people aren't party to. So I do wonder about Extinction Rebellion and their desire for people's assemblies. This is very broad. I don't know what we do. Have you got any ideas?
It's above my pay grade. I think questions about whether we live in a democratic country or not, or whether democracy is actually the right solution, I wouldn't get. That's another conference, I think. But no, I agree absolutely. Everybody feels that there is a massive democratic deficit in this, and it really got a focus with this, the beginning of their consultation, because it was so obviously, I'll use the word rigged. It's a simple word, but it was rigged. And that really made, I think, focus people's minds on the fact this is not fair.
Okay, now we're going to stop the conversation here because we're actually at lunch and we still haven't got Greg's video before lunch.